Welcome to my video series on the heroine's journey. I'm Susanna Liller, and it's time to find your happiness. I'm asking myself this as I begin this video. Do I really want to talk about the Vikings and the show I'm watching? Well, it's pertinent to a degree. So, yes, I guess I'll just start there. I've told myself to let my intuition lead the way for me on this, my stay-at-home pilgrimage is what I'm calling it, or journey to learn more about what is called the sacred feminine. And this morning, as I was preparing my comments for this, my notes for this video, I thought, oh, Susanna, you are writing and talking about how women have been treated throughout history at a very high beginner's level. And here you are watching something that provides examples. So use it. Some disclaimers. I've wanted to lay out for myself and you, if you're interested, how it is that women got to be such underdogs, I'm calling them, particularly after the Greeks and Romans and agrarian societies held women in much higher regard than the cultures that followed. I quoted from encyclopedia.com in my last video. I quoted this: the emergence of virtually every major civilization was associated in some way with goddess worship. While there may not be a single great goddess worshipped universally, the ubiquity of the phenomenon remains unbroken from Paleolithic times. And to every real historian who may be finding what I'm saying cringeworthy, forgive me. People who want to follow any of this from a reliable and educated source, please do find the experts. But anyone with even the slightest knowledge of history, as yours truly, can see our path of empowerment has been a slow and arduous one, a climb from being worshipped as a goddess, women being seen as magical, giving birth before it was understood how that really happened and how men actually did play a part. We were revered. So from being worshipped as a goddess way, way back, prehistoric times, to today, when women are still working on getting equal rights, it was just over 100 years ago that women in the US got the right to vote. Things certainly have improved in places, but not everywhere. And it has been often 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Progress often eludes us. But humor me and let me return to the Vikings. My husband and I have watched The Last Kingdom, and now we're watching Vikings Valhalla. And I know if you've watched any of them, these are violent shows. Heads repeatedly come off and terrible things happen. There's tons of fighting. The Vikings were definitely violent, but what has captured me is the history. These shows are very much about the British Isles and the northern tribes coming in, and it's based on history. And back to the historians cringing, however, you probably, historians, that is, will tell me these shows don't depict them accurately. Well, perhaps not. But my point is, and yes, you are probably, excuse me, begging me to get to my point. These shows portray a difference between the Viking treatment of women and the Christian treatment of women. It was the Christian kings who finally put down the Viking invaders. In 1066, the Norman invasion, King Harold died from an arrow in the eye, which is depicted so splendidly and beautifully in the Bayeux tapestries, which I was privileged to see in person. So just last night, I watched Freydis, the fabulous Viking heroine in the show, and the Shield Maidens. There were women heroes, women warriors. I watched them defend a Viking city. They are powerful and empowered women. They aren't treated as property existing just to serve or please men. So going back to history.com, they tell us that women in the Viking Age, Scandinavia, did enjoy an unusual degree of freedom for their day. They could own property, request a divorce, and reclaim their dowries if their marriages ended. Women tended to marry between the ages of 12 and 15, pretty young, and families negotiated to arrange those marriages, but the woman usually had a say in the arrangement. If a woman wanted a divorce, she had to call witnesses to her home and marriage bed and declare in front of them that she had divorced her husband. The marriage contract usually stated how family property would be divided up in case of a divorce. Though the man was the ruler of the house, the woman played an active role in managing her husband as well as the household. Norse women had full authority in the domestic sphere, especially when their husbands were absent. If the man of the household died, his wife would adopt his role on a permanent basis, single-handedly running the family farm or trading business. So suffice it to say that in certain cultures at different times, women had more respect and more power, even in the violent Viking culture. And what does this have to do then with what I'm trying to understand about the sacred feminine? Well, in keeping with the acceptance and regard of women, the feminine qualities seen mostly in women, have been respected more at different times than others. Those qualities typically associated with women, but remember, feminine as well as masculine qualities are present in varying degrees in everyone. How would you describe these qualities? Think of a woman who you look up to. I'll bet you find in her, for example, qualities of compassion, understanding, kindness, acceptance. If you've been accompanying me on my pilgrimage journey, I've written that I've been following breadcrumbs on the path. I got one last week from Sharon Blackie, the author, with her article about the ego heroine. This week, I got one from Jessie Graham, one of the real-life heroines whom I'm journeying with through my work in my course on the heroine's journey. She shared a February 13th article from this year, 2023, that Deepak Chopra wrote for Medium. I was delighted to find that he, too, was espousing a return to what he calls the eternal feminine. And can we say that the sacred feminine is the same as the eternal feminine? I think so. Chopra tells us that, quote, the eternal feminine needs to be recaptured, end of quote. He associates the aspect of the eternal feminine with these words: loving, peaceful, forgiving, warm, tolerant, harmonious, and heartfelt. He says that the feminine connotation of these words crosses social, gender, and national lines. Everybody has these qualities within them. He says that they are innate in human awareness. He said they are not mind-made. These are actual qualities that we possess, energetic qualities. And he says to access them, you need to bring in feminine energy. no matter who you are. He calls the practical aspects, so how you can actually see them in action, of feminine energy, the 4 A's: appreciation, affection, acceptance, and allowing. So you can actually see it when somebody is showing appreciation, affection, acceptance, and allowing. He talks about a healthy balance that's needed between the masculine and these feminine aspects, because of course there are masculine aspects. And he identifies, quote, the era of masculine dominance, which I'm thinking of the Vikings right now. They're certainly a part of that, which goes back to prehistoric times. He says it has not benefited men, who are as damaged by war, violence, and lack of love as women are. The masculine energy arc has not reached a state of exhaustion, which he says, I think, is felt quite widely. Brute force, physical strength, and aggression are masculine energies that once had survival value. So I'm sighing here. I probably should not be watching a show that is characterized by what he describes as those masculine energies: brute force, physical strength, and aggression. When I worked several years ago as a manager in a large corporation, I believed in leading with feminine values. That's how I had been brought up by my mother and my grandmother. But at the time, I was criticized as being too nice in my employee evaluation. I remember thinking, but I never shared it with the person evaluating me. I remember thinking that this had never been a problem for me, and still wasn't, because I could always accomplish what I needed to and be successful by doing what they called being nice. To me, it was the best way to make things happen, and still is. But that patriarchal, hierarchical organization, where so many leaders were formerly in the military, had a different view of leadership. For them, top down and directive. Leaders did not want to be seen as nice. At the end of his essay, Chopra advises us to become what he calls a unit of healing in your own life. To solve the huge problems our civilization faces, he proposes that we put into practice the feminine qualities that are the only avenue toward inner wholeness and balance. I'm wondering if I should go back to my evaluator and say, it's time for us to be more too nice in our leadership. Just think about it. If each of us let our feminine qualities out more, how would it affect our balance? And then the balance, our own inner balance of ourselves, and then the balance of those around us, and then how would that interpret out into the world? Here are those words again that Chopra says are associated with the eternal feminine energies: loving, peaceful, forgiving, warm, tolerant, harmonious, heartfelt. And then here are his 4 A's: appreciation, affection, acceptance, and allowing. Here is something I can do, I realize. I can work on being more of these healing energies. I might not solve the problems, the huge global problems of today, but I can work on bringing out these energies, starting small, working on myself. Those around me will feel them and maybe be encouraged to do the same. We have come a long, long way from the Vikings and the culture that operated during that time. And we've come an even longer, longer way from the civilization that worshiped woman as a goddess. I don't want to be worshipped as a goddess. I also don't want to be a shield maiden, but I do fervently want our world to be healed, all of it, meaning all the beings living in it. And I do believe that this process of encouraging the rise of the feminine qualities in all humans, regardless of social, gender, and national lines, will help us get there. I was going to say, let's let these words be our call to arms. But no arms needed. That sounds a little too Viking. If we practice the mantra of the feminine qualities of appreciation, affection, acceptance, and allowing. Thank you so much for watching me today, and I hope you'll continue to tune in.